Hey, welcome to another one of our Futures videos. We're continuing our topic on well-being, and today we're looking at how we can build mental well-being. Now, I was at the swimming pool with my son the other day. This was prior to lockdown, and he was looking up at the diving board and saying, "God, Dad, doesn't that look fun? Wouldn't that be great? Imagine jumping off there." And I went, "Yeah, it does, son." And I was completely lying. There's no way that looks fun. I don't want to do that. I'm not stupid, because well, I know how it would go, right? You'd climb to the end of the board, you'd feel your toes kind of wrap around the edge, that kind of bend and give in the board as you slowly get a bit more momentum, and then you commit to it. You put the weight down, you bounce up, you take off, you're heading through the air, and there's that moment you lean forward and you're falling towards the water, and then splosh. That's how it would go for me. I know that's how it would go for me. That's what it would be like. And you look at that picture, you can feel the pain, right? You can hear the slap. And that's what it'd be like for me. I've never jumped off a diving board because I know that's how it would go. Now, I mean, I know that's not like that for everybody. And you might be someone at home who's done this and you love it, and you know, do you know what? That's not how it works for me. When I do it, it looks like this. Straight in. Hardly any splash. And I want to use this as a bit of an analogy today, I guess, because they're both hitting the same thing. They're both hitting the same thing, but for one of them, it hurts significantly more. For one of them, there's a huge splash, and for the other one, hardly anything. Why? Well, because what determines the splash is our angle of entry. And that's the point I want to repeat to you today. What determines the splash is our angle of entry. Divers don't try and avoid the water. They don't try and avoid hitting that water. They're going to hit that water. What they do is they focus on what they can control, which is the shape they're in when they hit that water. Now, in life, we're all going to have splash moments. We're all going to have times when things get hard, when we hit the water, when we get dumped, when maybe our parents divorce, we lose friends, we fail a test, we lose our job, the illness of a loved one. There are big things that are going to happen to us in life, and there is no video, there is no lesson that I can do that's going to avoid those things happening. They're going to, but we're not trying to avoid them. We're not trying to avoid the water. What we're doing is focusing on what we can control, which is the shape we're in when we hit that water. Because what determines the splash is our angle of entry. What are we doing in life right now to create that mental well-being? This lesson isn't about how to cope when things get difficult. We're not talking about how to cope with any of these events today. What we are talking about is how to put ourselves in good shape for when they do come along. So how do we do that? Well, let's take physical wellness as a start. Let's say I want to avoid getting a cold, right? I want to avoid catching a cold and getting ill. What do? Well, I exercise. I have a balanced diet. I drink plenty of water. I get plenty of fresh air. If I do those things, then I'm going to give myself a good chance of being physically well. And why is that true? Well, because like we've said before, our current actions are future foundations. If I'm doing this sort of stuff, it doesn't make me immune, but it makes me less likely to get as ill. And when I do get ill, maybe not as badly. Because the current actions, the things I'm doing, are future foundations. Now let's take that across to our mental wellness, to our emotional well-being. Well, if I want to be emotionally well, I need to do all the same stuff that we just talked about there. I need to be getting exercise. I need that balanced diet. I need to be drinking plenty of water, getting fresh air. This isn't just some things that we think are nice. We know scientifically they're good for us. We know they release dopamine. We know that they're good for our health, both physically and emotionally. But there's extra stuff I can do too. I can connect with others, practice gratitude, do something called morning intention setting. What I'm talking about here are things that we know put us in good shape. There was a Harvard study into happiness, and they've studied, it's the longest running study of its kind for like, I forget now, it's close to 100 years now. They've been doing this survey of all their former alumni at Harvard, and they've been trying to track what keeps them happy. And every 5 years, for decades now, they've been asking people a series of questions. And it turns out that your job, your success, the amount of income you've got, none of that determines happiness. It turns out that the people who were happiest in their surveys were people who had good connections, who had friends and family that they do life alongside. Ironically, when life gets hard, when we're low, that's the kind of stuff we cut out. But we're not talking about when we're low. We're talking about preventative stuff, doing these things now to keep us in good shape. Morning intention setting. This was something I read about that the Dalai Lama was talking about, and he was saying that one of the things he does is he'll start the day by asking himself, what matters most to me in the world? If you start your day with a few deep breaths, a bit of quiet time on your own, take a second, breathe, and ask, what matters most to me in this world? What matters most for me? What do I want for me, for the people I care about? What we land on is that we want ourselves and the people we care about to be happy. We want simple things usually. We don't want PS5s and other things. We want really simple things. And then it says, it's morning intention setting. We set an intention. Now I've centered myself and reminded myself what matters to me. I make an intention for the day. I am going to greet everybody with kindness today. I am going to be less judgmental today. I am going to show people that I'm thinking more about them than me today. And I have that thought at the start of the day, and I resolve. It's an intention. I resolve to do it. And then I go out throughout my day doing exactly that, being really deliberate and purposeful, intentional in my interactions. Now this is strange because this is all about other people, not about me. How does this put me in good shape? Well, when we focus more on others, ironically we end up being better ourselves. When we move away from focusing on ourselves, we're better for ourselves. We're wired that way. Gratitude. We've talked about gratitude here before. You've done gratitude journals lower down the school. The thing we mixed up is that happiness doesn't lead to gratitude. It's being grateful that makes us happy. I'll say that again. Happiness doesn't lead to gratitude. I don't wait for that till I've got good things and then I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for what I have, and in being grateful I find that I'm happy. When we ask you to do this gratitude journaling and we ask you to keep track of moments in your day, and ideally, psychologists will like us to do it every day, to write down 3 things at the end of the day that went well that you were grateful for, it would get you in the habit of noticing that even on the worst days, there were good bits. And the more we get in the habit of noticing the good bits, the more we start to realise that our life is full of good bits. And when we're grateful for what we have, we find ourselves happier. Now, I want to kind of finish with a quote. It's a quote from the Dalai Lama, and he says, think about it this way. If your health is strong, when viruses come, they will not make you sick. If your overall health is weak, even small viruses will be very dangerous to you. Similarly, if your mental health is sound, then when disturbances come, you'll have some distress but quickly recover. If your mental health is not good, then small disturbances, small problems will cause you much pain and suffering. You'll have much fear and worry, much sadness and despair, and much anger and aggravation. The best solution to our suffering is mental immunity, but it takes time to develop. I'm not saying that your problems are small. But don't forget, I'm also not talking about how to get over your problems right now. We're not talking about how to cope with our problems. We're saying, how do we get ourselves in good shape for when the splash moments come? And that takes time to develop. Focusing on the good things, being grateful for the things that we have, being intentional in our actions, being physically well leads to us being emotionally well. And if we can spot when things are small problems, then that means when the bigger problems come along, we are in better shape to cope with them. And that's what I want to focus on in our next video. I'm going to spend quite a lot of time focusing on this idea of when are we treating smaller problems like they're bigger things? Can we shift some of that so we're not so tightly stretched that when the big stuff comes along, we're already snowed under? How can we better manage the position we're in now for when the big stuff does come along? Okay, so our big focus today, not fixing problems, putting ourselves in good shape for when they come along. All right. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you all again next week.